All right, on this episode of Bowks Talking Bouts, excited to be talking to an individual set to compete at BTC 16 going down on July the 9th, a featherweight bout between Jake Geauvreau and Cody Chovancek, and happy to be talking to Cody for the second time and having him on the show. How's all the training leading into this one as we talk on fight week, man?
You know what? It's been a long 8 weeks. I'm happy to get closer to the fight. I'm ready to go, ready to scrap. It's been a good camp though. Feeling really good, feeling better than I've ever felt before. So I'm excited.
Yeah, it seems like you're fired up to be in the position you're in. Like I was seeing the Instagram post, like honored to be in the main event. Just a talent stacked card, a lot of good like local talent that has like a tremendous amount of potential. Like, how are you feeling leading into this one? Just kind of topping the marquee. Is that like kind of like representative of like a next step, like incremental progression in the career? Like, is that how you're kind of looking at it?
Yeah, you know what? I called this kid out because it's a tough fight. I'm not looking for easy fights. So it's a big stepping stone for me to be main event, number one, for BTC, which is a really respected and fucking well-run organization. And to have my teammates that are absolute killers on the card, too, it's huge. And I'm honored, to be honest.
Yeah, it's a great look for sure. Definitely like a big kind of promotion to be like top in the marquee of. But in that post there, and you kind of alluded to it there rather, you were saying there's a reason I called this kid out. Was it purely like a competition minded thing because like you both have the 100% finishing rate going on there, or was there maybe a different reason why that call out transpired?
Well, so for my pro debut, I signed to fight him, and then he pulled out for injury. And then my second fight, I said yes. They offered me him again, and I said yes. And he was apparently hurt again, which is whatever shit happens in the sport. But it's kind of a fight that I was already looking at, I was already training for. So now that we're both 2-0, what better timing, right? And to be main event, everything just fell together perfectly.
Yeah, one of those like classic someone's O has got to go, the next guy advances to 3-0, like that kind of deal.
Yeah, exactly. I can't wait to hear Pete Trevino say that fight night. Somebody's O's got to go. I've heard him say it in the AME shows before, and it always got me fired up.
Yeah, and speaking of that linear kind of dynamic with like Pete Trevino and stuff like that, it seems like the same can be said for just really the BTC structure overall, just in the sense of like 2 pro bouts so far. Both BTC fights, we're getting ready for the third one, both under the BTC banner as well. Like, how are you feeling like just as you develop with the promotion and just your growth kind of undulating with the promotion growing? It seems like a good dynamic.
Yeah, it's really cool. BTC treats me good, so it's I'm really happy to be fighting for them. I signed a 3-fight deal with them, so it's huge. Sherry and Rob treat me good. I got nothing but good things to say about them, to be honest. They're a really well-run organization, and I hope to see them on UFC Fight Pass in the future.
Yeah, well, the growth has been pronounced for sure. It seems like they're trending in a good direction. So is that 3-fight agreement, like, in as far as, like, this next one is going to be the last one on the agreement? Or, like, did you, like, sign a 3-bout agreement in your last one? Like, how's that looking?
So I actually didn't sign a 3-bout agreement my first fight. So I signed my second fight there. So after this one, I have one more fight on the contract.
And something I kind of wanted to get clarification on, because I was seeing some of the aggregators out there, like Tapology and SureDog and stuff like that, like saying you're like a Michigan-based fighter, but you had an IG post saying Burlington is a hometown fight for you. So what's going on there? Like, what's happening there? Is Tapology lacking?
I don't know what the hell that's about. I messaged them, Tapology, and said, listen, I'm not. They have a couple of my fights wrong in there, too. They have a fight that they say I lost in a kickboxing fight, a pro kickboxing fight that I won. And, but apparently Waco has to message them and everything changes, so I'm not too worried about it. But for them saying I'm American, I grew up in Petrolia, which is just outside of Sarnia, which is a border town to Port Huron, Michigan. So I don't know how they got that mixed up, but yeah, I'm assuming that's how it happened.
Yeah, it strikes me as like a weird proximity thing, but it's still like incorrect at the end of the day. Like if someone's from Gatineau, you can't say they're from like the fringe province or be flippant about it. It's like you gotta be specific, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, I mean, I'm kind of wondering, like, just it seems like Niagara Top Team is a group you've been with for a decent while now. Like, when did they kind of initially get on your radar? Like, what kind of road led you to training with NTT there?
So actually, my good friend and main training partner, Jake Geauvreau, he brought me out for sparring. I think it was either his last amateur fight or his first pro fight. So we started training together, and this was just when NTT first opened up. So we'd go into the basement after hours and do our sparring rounds. And then I was like, fuck, you guys got a really good crew here. Like, I want to make the move to this gym. I ended up training with them full time, and they only had to be open for about 2 months or something like that. So I've been with them pretty much from the beginning. And I lived with Chris Prickett in the beginning, and then I moved out, and then I ended up moving back in. And that's where I'm living now with Chris and Jazz. So I'm their only return customer out of all the people that have lived there. So it's pretty funny.
Yeah, it seems like a rite of passage with like NTT almost. Like it's cool that Chris Prickett kind of allows for the different fighters to come in and kind of live there for a bit. Like I'm pretty sure Zach Powell had a similar dynamic for a bit and then got like a place kind of in the area a bit after. So it's cool that's a thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Chris is a fucking great guy, man. He's one hell of a coach. I don't know what I'd do without him. So yeah, he's always been super down to have people stay at the house and super cool with me always staying here. So it's been huge. Takes a lot of the stress off me anyway, that's for sure.
You know, a huge thing for sure, just like that kind of dynamic with it, but just in talking about that collective kind of like growing together, like you mentioned T-Shay and Chris Prickett there and stuff like that, and I saw like DeMarc Antonio there too with like the Austin, Texas trip recently. Like, can you speak to that there? That sounds like it was like a very beneficial kind of experience, just learning some new skills and just kind of working with new people.
Yeah, it was a huge trip, man. It was awesome. I was blessed to be there for the end of Jazz's fight camp, and just there with the team. Experior Financial Group actually ended up sponsoring the trip, so they covered our Airbnb, which was a lot of money. So big shout out to them. And yeah, it was a huge trip though. We all leveled up. We leveled up as a team. I felt like I leveled up as a fighter. Training at the B team, training at Henzo Gracie, being taught by Gary Tonin and Damian Anderson and all these other high-level jits guys. It was awesome, man. I learned a lot. I feel like it really stepped my game up too, and that's exactly what I needed. I know this kid's his background's jits. He's been doing it his whole life, so I know that's what his route to victory is.
So I think like recently working with a guy like Gary Tonin would bolster the confidence in that regard, like fighting a jiu-jitsu centric kind of guy. Like obviously you have skills in that regard before that point, but I mean, very few guys that are as high level in that regard as Gary Tonin is.
Oh yeah, for sure. And the way he breaks down the technique, it was fucking that high level. Like he didn't waste any words. What he said was exactly what you had to do, and it was super easy to follow. And yeah, just really good, really cool.
And just even like localized to the NTT group, like as I saw in one of the posts there, you were really, saying you couldn't thank Jasmine Jazz enough for the words of wisdom. I think that's a cool part of NTT as well, because like on a technique level, you get to assess where you're at and where the growth is at and everything like that. But I imagine you're just sitting under the proverbial learning tree, just with people who are in like, CFFC, Bellator, UFC, etc.
For sure, like all these guys, like Jazz and AJ and Romero, we're just watching them go and trying to follow their footsteps, right? And yeah, to saying what I was talking about in that post is I was working construction and training part-time and like kind of having thoughts about maybe I don't want to do this sport. I'm making money in construction and whatever. And Jazz kind of talked to me one-on-one and just fucking said, like, there's nothing cooler than this job. There honestly isn't. There's no better feeling than being in there and fighting. So it's about the legacy and everything in it, right? It's not just about making money right now. You got to trust the process because you're going to make money in the long run. So yeah, it was really cool. I couldn't thank her enough for the stuff that she said to me in the past. She's a huge motivator and a role model for me too. And she's an absolute workhorse. I've never seen anybody work harder than her, other than like AJ and Romero. They all fucking have the same attributes in that sense.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, all exemplary fighters that you were mentioning there. But it must be cool that this fight panned out the way that it did, because even when we were talking last time after your London victory there, you'd called out this opponent and really intersecting around like the timeline you were kind of looking forward there. So is that kind of like a cool thing, like in a sense, like just manifesting the desired next thing and now very much the reality for you there?
Yeah, that was cool. I mean, it all fell together. I'm glad we didn't fight the first couple fights when I signed to fight him, because now look at the fight we got now. It's main event. It's a lot of hype behind it. It's huge. I mean, it could not happen better. I'm excited for this fight, man. It's going to be a banger. You're not going to want to miss it, that's for sure.
And I'm always very curious for some of the, because like you had like that amateur learning curve, like some pro fights now. Like when did you, I guess, initially, take in mixed martial arts? Like when did it really like resonate with you? Was there like a distinct moment where you remember seeing it and thinking like, oh yeah, that would be a cool thing to do? Is there like a distinct moment like that, or?
Yeah, I guess like I was always watching fights and I was always getting in fights. So I was always street fighting and fighting in high school and stuff, doing stupid shit, right? Being a dumb kid. But so I was always kind of good at fighting, I guess. And that kind of sparked interest. I'm like, all right, I'm already decent at this without any actual training. Let's start training. And yeah, it just took off from there, man.
Were there like any favorite fighters, or was it more of like an interfacing with the, street fights, and then it's like, oh, maybe get them in there and it'll be more of a productive, like, guide their energy to that kind of thing? Like, were there like favorite fighters, or was it more to have like the energy outlet kind of thing?
Yeah, it was just kind of something like, well, I might as well do this shit for real, legitimately, and maybe get paid for it or get some sponsors or whatever, right? Instead of getting a criminal record in jail or something, right?
Yeah, no, for sure, man. And yeah, definitely a great run so far up until this point. But it seems like there's a lot of that like collective momentum with the team. Like I was seeing that they're like in the first weekend of March 2022 there, that it was like just going 5-0 over 3 separate events and in 2 different countries. Like as much as MMA is an individual sport, is there like an additional like bolstering of the resolve, like adding to what you're doing, just like seeing how the team's doing, like the rising of all boats kind of adage? Is it that sort of thing?
Yeah, it's really cool. I mean, there's no lack of motivation, that's for sure. There's everybody in the gym's fighting. We got AMI guys that are undefeated. We got pro guys that are undefeated. We got guys fighting in UFC, Bellator, CFC, big shows. So it's huge, man. Everybody's fighting. I feel like it takes away some of the nerves too, because your teammates fighting this weekend, and that next one after that, and next one after that. So you just keep it going back to back. That's what it is. The fight game. We're just scrapping.
Yeah, and like talking about like the previous post about being excited with teammates on the show and stuff like that, like it must feel good to like have like other people in the room who are like peaking around the same time, and like they're going through their different increments in the same timeline. Like I would think that creates a level of camaraderie just in the build up too.
Oh, for sure, man, for sure. It's huge.
Yeah, this is going to be a stellar card, and you love to see that for sure. But just in the interest of being mindful of your time, man, like is there anything maybe you want to add as a parting thought as we're kind of wrapping up here?
Yeah, I would just like to shout out my coaches, man. Chris Prickett, Matt DiMarcantonio, and yeah, they're out there every weekend. Like you see how many fighters we got fighting. They're always going there. They're always going someplace. Like Prickett, maybe last weekend he was in, I think it was Philly for AJ's fight, and then he went straight to Montreal for Liggett and Clayton's fight. So it's just huge, man. I want to be fully committed because I know they're fully committed for us. I want to be there for them because they're there for us. It's huge. I've never seen such dedicated coaches. So just big shout out to them, man, and everybody at NTT.
Some great shout outs for sure, and this is going to be a great card coming up, and just topping the marquee there, BTC 16. People can go to the Burlington area and check that out on July the 9th there. Jake Geauvreau and Cody Chovancek getting out there, and yeah, it should be an intriguing featherweight fight and 2 undefeated prospects that are intriguing to watch. And thanks again for coming on the show, man, and just looking forward to checking out the fight, and you enjoy the rest of your day too.
Thanks, brother. Appreciate you taking the time.